And also in 2003, the first Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that Call of Duty is only 12 years old.
Only
Yeah.
12 years old.
There's been 45 Call of Duties since.
45 million
Yeah.
Call of Duties since.
We were talking about, this was a PC only.
It was PC only, is that
Yeah.
true? Wow.
Yeah.
And it was Infinity Ward's first game. The first game as the studio.
There's kind of an interesting history there where the original Call of Duty was PC only, and then a couple of games later, it would move completely to console. I think 3 was only on console, and then after that, it was sort of on everything. So
Yeah.
there were some weird ups and downs in the early years.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because it was looking at, sort of Medal of Honor was the series that was owning World War II shooters
Yep, Steven
back
Spielberg.
then. Steven Spielberg. It had that amazing level that was very much cribbing from Saving Private Ryan.
Yep.
But then, Infinity Ward released this game and it had this like 3-pronged campaign where you played as a British soldier, an American soldier, and a Soviet soldier, and it just this really amazing cinematic storytelling that, right from the get-go, it's easy to look forward and say, like, well, Call of Duty 2 was the game that brought it to 360, and then Modern Warfare was obviously the game that changed, shooters in general. But really, like, it was the quality of that first game, and it got a ton of Game of the Year awards. It was that quality coming out the gate that really sort of put that series on a map and allowed them to, later on make the changes in the industry that they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think the original Call of Duty, it's interesting. It's an interesting game to go back and look at now because you can see sort of the kernels of what's still in that franchise. Like the campaign placed a premium on kind of squad mates. Like you're not a lone soldier. Like you are part of this like army that's like trying to press and advance like through, the different stages. And that's something that the Call of Duty campaigns still kind of feel that way.
Yeah, usually like part of a team.
Yeah.
And so they're definitely like, you're right that Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4, that's the one that like the franchise was one thing, and then after that it was a different thing. But there's still like less has changed than you might think when you go back and look at the original, at least on the single player side.
Yeah, well, what was the multiplayer like with the original Call of Duty?
I don't know, I didn't have too much experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, generally it wasn't as, in the multiplayer department, Battlefield was the game that was, at the time, way superior in terms of, the suite of options you had and the amount of people playing it and the sort of the insanity that stemmed from the sandbox. Yeah, I mean, honestly, multiplayer in Call of Duty wasn't huge until Modern Warfare. Like that's the multiplayer in Call of Duty 2 isn't what I remember from that game. It was that amazing campaign and the fact that this was the only thing I wanted to play on my 360 at launch.
It slowly picked up steam. Like I feel like a lot of people played 2 and 3.
Yeah.
It just slowly built over time and then really exploded with Modern Warfare.
Yeah. It was smart. It sort of set the precedent for these very short, tight campaigns, which Call of Duty games have had pretty much since. That was actually one of a lot of people at the time were faulting the game for having a short, like 6-hour campaign, but I think that's become a thing that people really appreciate, especially when it balances out with the multiplayer that people play for months. But it's kind of cool to be able to sit down and in 2 or 3 sittings, finish an entire like story that has all these really cool cinematic beats.
It's funny to look back, now that we have, just time has passed and we can look back at the original. It came out, it was a big hit, critically successful, commercially successful, but you wouldn't guess that 12 years, 13 years later.
It would be the biggest game.
That it's the biggest thing in video games, period. Like, it's kind of surprising how,
maybe,
it's something...
maybe today Minecraft is bigger. But
That's true.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah, League
I
of
mean, there was a
Legends.
time when
Okay.
it was literally the biggest thing in video games.
One of the biggest, in
Not
the face
literally,
of-
but it was the biggest thing.
But it's like, then it makes you wonder, is there some weird, smaller thing happening now that in 13 years will be like, man,
What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe it's like
Ukulele?
topic for a future game.
It's ukulele.
I couldn't come up with a snarky answer fast.
Yeah, and it's really easy to sort of hate on Call of Duty or any annualized franchise. People tend to do that online. But you have to look at it in sort of just awe and respect and be like, man, look what these people built. They built like an empire in the course of just over a decade.
Employs thousands of people, makes billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And again, whether you love them or hate them, they're consistent. They're putting out a very consistent product that, even if it does have some problems, it's good, right? It's very good every single year.
A lot of people do really, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there has to be something there.
Yeah, and it's one of those games that breaks into the mainstream that you see, Monday Night Football has commercials for, and it's on the side of buses, and
Exactly.
there's terrible Twitter campaigns that scare people into thinking there's a terrorist attack.
Well, so the first, trying to remember, the first Medal of Honor was like 98, I want to say.
Yeah, that was...
So at that point, that series had been around for 5 years until Call of Duty. And then Call of Duty was still set in World War II for another...
couple of years, yeah.
For
3 games.
5 years.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
That was like a long reign of World War II shooters.
Yeah, we had Brothers in Arms back then, too.
Right, Call of Duty was another blank of blank shooter.
Yeah.
It was an especially good one and a standout one, but it wasn't special like it would become later.
Yeah. Sure.
You're special.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aw.